Zen, I want to welcome everyone to the Coffee Talk Podcast number 31, Raise Edition. That's it.
Well, and trading.
And trading, right? Raise and
Right.
trading. So, not to just meanfully just end the conversation that we were having, which was very nice, but we did have a big announcement this week from GGG about trade. And I just, with no further ado, we can just let Raiz go. And what are your thoughts on everything? I mean, you had a clip that was pretty popular about the sort of the design of the website, but
Okay, so the clip, I mean, because people thought I was pretty skeptic. I would agree, but that was like pulled off from like an entire conversation. So
Yeah.
the clip was definitely overly critical. I won't lie, when I saw the news, I was like, wait a minute, it took you guys a year to make the same thing but worse than's already been available? I kind of like, what happened? And then I went on Reddit and everybody's like, this is the best thing ever. I'm reading it, I'm like, what? But then obviously there's the AFK changes and the D&D changes, and apparently the API. I don't know if it's updated yet or if they're updating
They
it so
already had
that
it in there, so it's all
it,
about the sites actually updating into their code or
right.
whatever.
Yeah, so that's pretty exciting news.
Yeah.
So initially my reaction was I was pretty skeptic because I didn't think it's that big of a use. But honestly, when I started thinking about it, I was like, okay, I've played Diablo 2, I've played Diablo 3, on PoE it's banned to use D2JSP, right? But you were basically using D2JSP for everything outside of the, RMT aspect. That's how you just traded. And in D2, you would like join servers. So really, when I thought about it, I was like, I'm actually kind of okay with trading the way it is right now because, I'm used to it. It's been forever since I've traded like that. But still, when I think about it, this is the worst case scenario for me because for the longest time I was like, please don't tell me that they actually intend trading to be this way in like the very end when they finish everything up. And they do, which is the worst case scenario, but if they updated the AFK stuff and all that, I'm kind of okay with it, I guess.
So so then can you say what about current trading you hate, and then what would you change or fix then?
Oh, that's such an extensive topic. I'm not a Okay, so for that we'd have to go into the whole like auction house talk, which I don't know if we want to have.
That's okay.
Because
Sure, it's trading.
Everything trading. Everything trading. It was big week for trading. So yeah.
Big week.
I think there's definitely big problems with the auction house, and there were huge problems with the way the auction house was done in Diablo 3, and I don't think there's nearly as many problems with the auction house the way it's done in World of Warcraft. And so I'm not necessarily 100% for an auction house, but I also wouldn't really mind it. Like, I think a lot of people, when they say that the auction house is a really bad thing, live in kind of a little bit of a bubble because they're like, well, there's going to be more bots. Come on, guys. There's already bots. It will, like, increase some sort of gap between players when it comes to flipping. I don't really feel so. I feel like very few people flip on PoE right now and they get really rich from it, but if there was an auction house, everybody would do it, and therefore it would kind of close that gap. While now it's only a few that get really rich. Like, knowing your stuff when it comes to trading in PoE is super huge. So as I would change it, I don't really know. I was kind of hoping they're gonna come up with something, to be honest.
Do you think, because that actually leads into, I think, an interesting question. Do you think that everyone thinking that GGG is going to reinvent the trading wheel is why a lot of people are either, like, so we have one part of the community is kind of like, they're all for this. They're like, oh, this is great. And then the other one just hates it. And obviously there are people in between. It's not all just black and white, but do you think that a lot of, because there has been a lot of people like really hating on it because they just copied this and then they didn't reinvent the wheel. Do you think that's why a lot of people are upset? The fact that we're all expecting them to come up with another great idea?
Right. I feel like this is kind of because GGG is always praised for how well they communicate, but I feel like when it comes to the really, really, like, where's permanent specters? Where's trade? Like the really big stuff. They say some things, but then they don't follow up, or they don't say anything at all, or they say something's gonna happen. Everybody's like, "Oh my God, what is this? Illuminati things are happening," and then nothing. Like, it's this big thing where they don't necessarily communicate particularly well. And I feel like a lot of what happened with the trading right now, and a lot of what people were expecting from what they said in the past, just didn't really come into fruition. But the reason why I say it's worst case scenario for trading was because, yeah, this is kind of, for the longest time I was thinking that they want trading this way. Like they were looking for something to make trading different so that people will be happy with it. But at the same time, deep down, they were trying really hard to keep the current system because they just like it. And what they would do would be against their own will, but more like a thing for the community.
You really think they like it, though?
Yeah, I think they love it. I think they really, really like their way of trading, or the way you used to trade in ARPGs and Diablo 2 and all that sort of stuff. I think they're really stuck on certain things like that.
Well, I agree. I would say I agree that they have a certain way and perspective on what they want it to be, but in the post they also said with insufficient foresight into how it eventually affect trade, right? So there's a lot of these things that PoE trade and how trading is right now is actually working against them and their idea of their game overall.
How so? I didn't really get that from the post. It's working against what they want trading to be?
Well, it's working too well. Trading is working too well. Right. So they can't balance their game anymore. Right? They can't create chase uniques because, well, like in the sense that they can't create like items that people wanna like farm for, or whatever it is that incentivizes players to actually go out and play their game. They can't really do that anymore because everyone just goes on PoE trade because it's the most powerful way of getting there, and then it just kind of like destroys that entire like journey for the player, unless the player itself then imposes rules and goes and sold a self found and says, well, I don't want to participate in the most powerful tool in the game. So in that sense, I don't think this is like exactly how GGG would want it. It's not completely against their idea of it. It's just become too powerful.
It seems like it's tough for them to balance the two things of they want the sort of the so-called average person to be able to get X, Y, or Z item, but then if trade being so easy, if there's any chance for the average person to get it, then the more top echelon people can get it inside 5 hours of a league or whatever, or whatever the extreme example is of something or other. And it seems like that's their biggest problem, right? They really want everyone to be in the same marketplace, same area, same league. They want everyone together in the same league, but they want everyone to have a good experience. And unfortunately, one group is going to suffer. One group or another will suffer. So like right now, it does kind of feel like, at least to me, the people who play a lot, who could take advantage of the trading stuff, suffer a little bit for the people who are much more the average consumer.
Really?
That's what I mean. GGG's even saying that.
If I can just read a snippet out of the post they made, right? So they go on so there's the long post about Trade and Path of Exile, which goes over where they started, where the trading system went, how easy it is, and everything. And then they so they started with the forum trade. It then comes into the trade tools and the forum trading bots and all that, and then we end up where we are today. And so they end that paragraph by saying, so that's where we are today. It's easy to list items for trade, easy to search for items, and often quite frustrating to complete a trade. This remaining frustration is the only thing standing in the way of trades being basically instant. While we understand that this sounds like a positive thing, we are very concerned regarding what will happen if that does eventuate, right? Removing that last part. We have to prioritize the long-term health of Path of Exile. So I don't think that they're necessarily seeing all this as being great.
Yeah, but it's just that I feel like their prior behavior goes against this mentality. Because, okay, so they want players to play the game and not spend their time on a third-party website trading. They say trading is important and items matter, but at the same time, they want people playing the game. But when it comes to the longevity of the game, I feel like their past behaviors just are the opposite of that, right? By constantly releasing stuff like Ascendancy, they've increased the clear speed to the level where the game is almost unrecognizable. So in that way, because people are literally like 10 times faster than they were 2 years ago. So therefore, in that way, they're kind of working against themselves with the way they're balancing the game. And that's like, I feel like that's really impactful, while people accessing trade easier is not nearly as impactful as the things that they've done to increase clear speed, therefore decreasing the longevity of the game. So I just don't feel like trading would be that impactful in comparison to what they've done.
And and I think that's a fair point. I think the only thing I would say is, it's like a philosopher, chicken and the egg, or a circle has no beginning, right? They
Right.
feed off each other. I mean, your point, I think, really maybe if they could rein in things, maybe that would smooth out trading too, and vice versa. You know what I mean? Like maybe trading is fine, but the fact that you kind of just show up and your level 85 character is, if you took your level 85 character from today and transported it back to 2013, it would be the greatest character anyone had ever seen in the history of PoE. They'd be like, holy fuck, what is happening? You're a nuclear bomb that runs around the map and everything
like
dies.
not even close. Like it's not make this under. It's like not even close.
Not even close. Yeah. So, it's such a good point, and my question is, what do they do to solve that? I mean, I know that I personally have kind of hated some of that sort of ascendancy stuff, where it's, I guess it just feels like for them, they feel like it's there. That is the appeal to the game, right?
Yeah, for
Do you
sure.
think that's true? Like if they just, let's say, just wholesale got rid of ascendancy, do you think people would stop playing PoE in droves?
Well, I mean, I think in their okay, so I always compare this to a streamer, right? So you do something on stream and then you get more and more subscribers. So in your head, you're like, I'm doing something right. Even though that thing that you're doing might be, having a finger in your ear, right? Clearly it's not that impactful, but for whatever reason, it's getting you more subscribers. So if they're releasing these things that constantly increase clear speed, and PoE has been always known to be this like slower game, hard game, and they're releasing these things and they're gaining so much popularity out of nowhere, they must be thinking in their heads, we're doing the right thing, let's continue to do this. And it's just gotten to a pretty extreme point, as they've kind of admitted in the past, with Chris saying that movement skills are broken and stuff like that in some of the recent interviews. And so I feel like their statement would have definitely been super impactful. Like imagine if they made trading way faster, 2 years ago, then it would have been a huge difference. Like it would be so much faster because people played so much slower. But now, I don't feel like it's that impactful.
It's funny because hearing you talk, Raiz, it sounds like stuff that I would say myself. Like I there are times when I've said how much of this popularity is just because D3 shit the bed, right? I mean, to me, D3, and I've played some D3, and I think there's some very fun elements to it, but it seems like people have become confused about how Blizzard's doing things, and then at the same time, PoE, right or wrong, adding stuff, changing stuff, leagues, and blah blah blah. So it seems like people are getting engaged with it. I mean, I don't know how can we point to the thing, but like you say, the game has exploded in popularity when they've added these things, so they keep wanting to add that stuff. So it's like, I mean, to me, the Pantheon system has to be one of the more confusing things that they've ever done since I've been playing PoE, because it's like, so you added a system that's basically, I don't know, a quarter ascendancy or something, because they didn't want to redo the ascendancy problems. On the other hand, it has such a cool idea. Like I remember we had Ziggy D on, and he was talking about, imagine if you like captured a god power, and when you activated it, your character grew and like turned red, and like ground erupted in lava, or like just there was like something going on that made you you're like, wow, I become this thunder god, or I become Hulk, or I become whatever, and you get really engaged, versus just this passive thing that you don't interact with, and once you get it, set it and forget, and you don't really interact, right? It seems like trade has suffered from the same problem a little bit.
I really am not that critical of the Pantheon system. First off, I think they run out of time. I feel like the reason why, like in my eyes, the next expansion, like what they're saying, I was expecting one. People are saying, oh, then there's gonna be a league after this. Where's the end game? Blah blah blah. I kind of knew that there's going to be an expansion. And I've talked about this previously on stream because there were just so many things that they kept talking about that didn't make sense they would get rid of. Like, for instance, they talked about champion mobs. They talked about the lore aspects of Harbinger. They talked about like the lore aspects of Breach and how Breach was supposed to be the super like extensive thing. It felt like they continuously kept running out of time when they were developing leagues. And so it got to a point where they're like, yeah, we got to release this expansion. And so we have to keep cutting time from all these things. And now that they've released 3.0, I feel like all the things that they were kind of planning to be the final touches of all the previous leagues are going to be just come together and be this one massive thing. And a big part of that was a rebalance of the Atlas and a big change to the Atlas. And now that we have all these new tile sets, I mean, it's a better spot than ever to tie that into the Pantheon system, because you've got all these new map bosses, you've got all these potentially new gods. You know, maybe there's going to be even like a second page of the Atlas or something like that. That I feel like they wanted to implement all this stuff with Pantheon, but then they just kind of
ran out of time.
You know, they just kind of ran out of time, because I rarely really see. Like, GG is so good at what they do as a developer that when you see something so glaringly bad, you can't help but think there must be something underneath the surface. Like, there must be something behind that. And the Pantheon system is kind of like that, but right now it also has some cool interactions, like the whole like regeneration Slayer thing. That's pretty cool. And it does enable some sort of builds. But it doesn't have that coolness aspect to it for sure.
Do you think
it does well with some things?
Do you think they might have skimmed on a little bit of the power, maybe because they were afraid of how much the ascendancy, like how much of an impact the ascendancy had on the whole clear speed? Because if they're actually worried about where the game is headed and for the longevity of the game, well, then they might actually not implement. Like they might want to hold it back. It's very hard to just make it. I think in the state that PoE is in right now, adding interesting mechanics that are anything other than just something that clears, like runs really fast and does a lot of damage, is very hard to implement for people to interact with. So I feel like how do you actually make it interesting in the current state of the game? You can't just make it powerful. So just due to that fact, is that just because we're expecting to get more power? Like, I don't know.
I feel like the problem, like all of this basically boils down to why we feel the Pantheon system is not nearly as impactful, is the fact that the mobs don't fight back. It's a defensive system that has no purpose because mobs don't hit you. They're just running XP. And so if they were to, again, go back, implement all the things that they were talking about the champion mobs and special mobs, and every pack is going to have something special, then maybe potentially with the Pantheon system, in a cool way, you can fight around these newly implemented mobs. Hopefully would happen next patch.
What's your, as somebody who I feel like I've seen play a lot of sort of trap builds and stuff like that, but what's your opinion on Reflect, old Reflect, when you would just have packs of Reflect mobs and you could kill yourself? Whatever you're doing. Do you think it's bad or good? Yeah.
Oh, if it was bad or good, wow. In the way that it was in the game, it was definitely very, very bad. The current Reflect, I would say, is not nearly as bad, but I also understand that there's a big part of the community that really suffers from it, like really, and it's a growing part. It's a very big part of the community, because in the past it would be primarily hardcore people that would have a problem with this. Now I feel like there's not nearly as many hardcore people as there used to be. I would even go as far as to say that probably more than 80% of the community is softcore right now.
Yeah,
and it really
amount, at least.
Hurts those guys. Yeah, there's just been such a huge player influx. It's hard to not think. You know, people don't really start off on hardcore. They rather go on softcore. And so I feel like that really hurts them. So in the current way the reflect is in the game, I feel like it's not a cool way to counterbalance, poorly optimized characters in a way, right? Because if you're killing yourself, then you've made a mistake building your character. But at the same time, it's so important for these people, these new players, and all people who build just very glassy builds, for there to have a way to deal with this. And so in the way that it is right now, yeah, I feel like it's also kind of poor. I
Can
always
I?
like the idea of it being temporary, though. I don't know. I thought that was
The,
cool.
the other thing I was going to say, and then to Nuki's thing,
Mhm.
to me, it feels very similar. The way their thought process for Reflect and how it's gone on, it feels very similar to Trade. If you follow what I'm saying, like there were at one point there was artificial limitations that frankly were just stupid, and at one point the way Reflect worked was just mind-numbingly stupid. But
Yeah.
but it did what it was supposed to do, which was provide a speed bump, or not even a speed bump, a wall. You'd run into the wall and your car would crash. So and like this, to me, it worked the same way with Trade. And as they've been like, okay, well, it's just not fun at a certain point, so we're going to deal with that. Then they remove that, but then they don't ever deal with. It's like they gave everyone a car that can go as fast as possible. So before, it didn't matter that your car could go the speed of light because you would hit that wall at some point. So you always had to balance. And to me, Trade has suffered from the same thing where there were these limitations and they took the limitations away, but then they didn't put anything back in as a limiter or as something to what I don't know. I mean, imagine if you could only list 10 things or something. Maybe that's really stupid. I'm not saying that that's a solution, but it's like there'd be a way. Maybe I don't know. I feel like
Yeah,
I
no,
just feel like there's something that we're missing. Because like you say, builds clear so fast. And people can list every single thing they ever get. Right? They can put it all in the shop.
it takes no time. I mean,
Yeah.
a lot
It
of
takes
people
no
have
time.
tabs set up that have like specific prices. They just shift click
Right.
the control click, whatever it was.
Right.
But let me just quickly on the reflect thing before we go away from that. So do
Yeah.
you think, because right, you say it's a big problem, right, for a lot of players coming in, but do you think it's a big problem because of the state the game is in, or do you think the reflect inherently is just a problem? Because imagine you had to build more defensive, because let's assume that you make the monsters fight back and hit you. That encourages you to build more defensively, which then also defends against yourself. But when the game is all about just kill things fast, and then the only thing that stops you is this one mechanic, well then you're not building defensively. So, because I feel like if you would just, instead of just focusing on reflect, which is more of like, it's more the effect of the clear speed meta, then if you then bring more if you bring back just fighting monsters, well then, yeah, there you go.
Yeah, you don't have to do that one massive thing that's so like glaringly
Yeah.
ridiculous. Yeah, no, I feel like they're definitely thinking about it. I think they're definitely on the right track, because if you look at the changes to volatile, I feel like it's one of the greatest changes ever made, because it basically went from countering builds that already were having big problems, which is melee, they just couldn't keep up with all the other stuff, builds that were really up close, to being a massive counter to the builds that off screen now and that go really fast. Because sure, you can try to run away from the ball, but if you're off screening something and you kill that volatile, by the time you notice that ball, by the time it's even on your screen, it's already going super fast. So if they could maybe approach reflect in a way like that, where my build is super ridiculous, I clear 3 screens of mobs without even looking at it, and then I get hit by something like that, then you feel like you're getting punished for something that you probably shouldn't be doing. But those are also the builds that people have the most fun with, right? Like,
why do people have fun with builds though? Is it just because I feel like I think at the end of the day we also have to like recognize what is it that makes the game fun, right? We want to feel powerful. How do you feel powerful? Sure, you can kill things really fast and stuff like that, but it's only because I feel like there's like this relative aspect to it where, well, if you kill faster than the other guy, well, that's fun. But if you're always killing faster than the other guy, even though you're going slower, well, then is that still fun? Because I feel like the game can be slower and just as fun.
You see, yeah, but that's also my mentality. I enjoy the game being slow and really punishing, and that's fun to me. But let's be honest, most people are just like, I want to go zoom zoom
Yeah.
as fast, not even be able to react to anything and just blow shit up, you know, enter any cheat code I possibly can on any, you know, get that big daddy and
Mm-hmm.
just blast through any RTS.
Get the BFG 9000.
As long
There
as you
you
can
go.
achieve that, though, as long as there's a way you can achieve that, and you can give players that,
Well,
right?
but I think
Because
PoE does that right now. It's just that
yeah,
what raises point though is that for a lot of people they don't. Sure, that's great. They would much rather punch in the code.
but would
Right.
it
Yeah.
would it
So
really take away? Like, would it really diminish the player base at all if you push that state, that game state, further down the road? Like maybe it
yes,
took a month before
I
you got
think so.
there.
I
absolutely.
think
Well, you can just look at this since we were speaking of World of Warcraft. You can just look at World of Warcraft for a nice example of right. So the vanilla game was tough, had its problems, whatever, but it was popular and growing in popularity. Then the Burning Crusade came out, which a lot of people view as one of the best expansions. But I can tell you from personal experience, the first month or two of that game of that expansion, Blizzard had some real fucking ideas about how they wanted to bring back the EQ raid experience or something like that with attunements and all this stuff. People cried, and in all out fairness, very justifiably so. And they really went away from that because it was just not. So many more people were playing the game, and no one really wanted to deal with all that crap. Even though I might have liked some of it, and maybe you and Raiz would have liked that stuff. That's just not. That's not the thing. So I think the thing is, how do they accomplish both? Ideally, they want to accomplish both. They want the person who does not want to put in that Herculean effort to be happy,
Yeah.
and they want us to be happy on the other end at the same time. And I think that's GGG is just in the process of trying to figure out how to do that. And
Right.
and to me, it's very interesting because I really feel like trade is one of the things where you see this thought process and it's lagging behind every other major game system. So like clear speed, I actually think we already went through this process once where they were like, okay, things are getting crazy and we're going to rein things back in. And then I don't know, they must have seen people stop playing or must have seen people whatever,
That
right?
that's the thing. I feel like they've done that a lot, honestly,
Yeah.
because in the way I understand it, what they used to do is they would release a league, and then they would release all these new items, and then they would be like, okay, that's overpowered, that's overpowered. This we have to balance, and then they would keep it consistent. And for honestly, like 2 years, I want to say, since open beta started, the game hasn't really improved much in terms of clear speed. If anything, by nerfing like spark totems, it's gotten kind of slower, or it kept the same pace. And at some point around the time they released Ascendancy, it seemed like they changed their mentality of, we don't have time to do these huge balance changes at the end of every league or midway through the league. So if everything's broken, then nothing's really broken. But the thing that bothers me with this, and why so many people are constantly telling me like, how happy am I about solo self-found, because I like playing by myself, I want the game to be slower, and how happy am I about it? I'm kind of happy about it, but at the same time I feel like by dividing the player base in that way, and that's what they've said for the longest time, they don't want to divide the player base, and now that they have, it's pushing away from the perfect fix to our issue, which is the core game being what it is right now, and then having a separate game mode that could potentially accomplish the things that the older players want, or the players who have been playing for longer, right?
Right.
What we want essentially. And like Path of Exile in a way is the perfect format for something like that, because it's got the leagues.
Yeah.
It can move around players so insanely well. I feel like something like that could potentially work, but at the same time I don't feel like that many people are going to play it.
Well,
And
Does
it
that
might
matter,
just
though?
not be worth the time, right?
Right.
Because then the other group is whining like, why are you putting effort into balancing this shit when I want my EK to go twice as fast? Why don't you give us another ascendancy? So it's so tricky.
I think there's almost no point for me to be right here on the podcast because I think so far, Raiz, you've said everything exactly the way I would have said. And I'm not joking. I shared with Noogie after they made the trade thing. I made a Reddit post about what I actually wanted, and I said that I wanted a league that was like solo self-found, except instead of it being where trade is turned off, I want all of the trade fluff that they've instituted over the years turned off. Like, I want Forsaken Masters gone. I want Parandus gone. I want divination cards gone.
Whoa.
You know,
you take it like to the real extreme.
Right, but I'm saying, like, if they won't nerf the drop rates and keep trading, so we have something like the old days, and we have to do there's something we want. And you're making a point that, you know, I don't know, they don't want to split the community up, but if there's truly 100,000 people playing PoE at this point, what's the problem with letting the 10,000 people who want to play some sort of other mode?
Yeah, we're not really in a state anymore where a league will die because you die, like if you dilute one league a little bit, it's not like it just die, like the remaining people like die out.
Yeah,
because the problem in the past with why we don't have league races like in the middle anymore is, right, are you will split the community, there's no trading going on and all that kind of stuff. So with more players, it lessens that issue. Or not?
Yeah, but it's development time. I feel like that's their concern, because once they put something like this in, like an Iron Man type of game mode,
they have to keep it.
They have to keep it. Like, they're committed.
Sure.
They don't want to disappoint the people by nerfing cast and crit, right? If they do, there's a huge community backlash. Like, imagine if 10% of the community leaves. Like, that might not be that many players, and you know, the core game wouldn't really be impacted, but GGG would definitely feel it. And so now imagine there's 90% on one side and there's 10% on our side or whatever, right? It's kind of comparable to the Xbox release. I feel like people were just literally go, why are you putting effort into this thing that only 10% of the community plays when you could be putting effort into this thing that 90% play? And it's just boiling down to development time.
Right. Well, and that's a fair point, because I'm definitely in I don't know why they put any money towards the Xbox thing.
Whoa.
I don't know. But see, the thing is, this is so interesting, because, like, in fact, all of the great, like, if you think about America, right? America is this country, and we started government, and, you know, by the people, for the people, this blah blah blah. All of the people who founded it said the most important thing is to understand the way humans work. Right. So instead of being like, well, we want to see the best in people, no, we want to understand that everyone acts in their own self-interest. That's part of being a human. So as long as we understand that, we can take advantage of that. So then we have 3 branches of government or 2 branches of government, or everyone's acting in their own interest, and then it balances out to hopefully make something good. So, like, when I say I don't care about Xbox because I'm never going to play Xbox, that's what you should do that. And you should be vocal about that. Now GGG, of course, they're acting in their own interest, which they say, hey, maybe we can get a lot of money from Xbox. And I don't know that or care about that, right? It doesn't have anything to do with me. I think it's totally okay to express, as long as you're not saying I want to kill the people who designed the Xbox port, right? I mean, that's where we're going a little far. But it is a good point that you make, because, right, I'm asking for something that 85 or 90% of people don't care about.
Yeah.
Right. Slowing things down or whatever. So the question is, what is the minimalist way that GGG can accomplish these things? I mean, it's the same thing with racing. Right. I'll tell you right now, I sort of said to Noogie, I haven't played PoE because I don't like the current league, and there's no racing. So what's going on? I always used to, when I didn't really like the league, I always had racing that I could play.
I want to ask a question here. Is the only thing that GG is ever allowed to implement from this point on, then, with these arguments in mind, is that anything, like, is that things that only appeal to 100% of the player base? Because that's kind of what I'm hearing right now, right? Well, you can't do anything that only affects a small part, because if it's not affecting the whole community, then the entire community will, like, the entire community is going to go up in uproar, and it's not affecting me, so therefore we can't do it.
I don't know about that. Like, even with the ES changes and people really going crazy about that, I feel like, especially recently, they've really, like, they've stomped their foot, they've taken a stand to kind of bring things a little bit more under control. So I don't feel like it needs to be pushed to that extent. Like, the problem is with the comparison to WoW, for instance. So we were talking earlier about, well, maybe people on the podcast couldn't hear that, but we were talking earlier about classic servers for World of Warcraft, right? And how that's going to be something really, really popular now. The difference with something, because I was thinking, okay, so maybe PoE will get to a point the way WoW did, where it was, like, really popular, and now people want the classic servers. They want the thing back. And I was thinking, would PoE would be the same way, where people are going to get to this extreme that we're getting to right now, and then people are going to be like, no, everybody wants like what PoE used to be. And the difference is that WoW was most popular when it was classic and TBC, and then it was worse.
Right.
And with PoE, it was it was
true.
popular, and now it's getting big, right?
Yeah.
So like we're really far away from that point where people are just gonna want the old experience. And where is that point anyway? Like that point of PoE was the most fun. Right now, is it is it open beta, or maybe it's right now and we just don't know it? Now it's the most players we've ever had.
Well, can I say I actually think that now would be the most fun, with a few tweaks that maybe the general population would play in. I really think the version of Path of Exile right now, by far the best version of Path of Exile I've ever played in terms of mechanics. I don't know, graphics. Maybe that's a tough one because
Hell yeah,
it's all over the place. But it feels like it a lot. It's just, can we tweak some of the small gameplay things if you prefer a different style of game, right? Like that's, and I mean, you make a really good point about it. Some version back in the a couple years ago, what did PoE have on Steam? Like 3,000 people playing. This last time they had 96,000. So, obviously there's not much argument to be made about your point. You're definitely right. It's just a question of how do we accomplish it with very little effort on GGG's part. I still come back to, if they allowed someone or some way or some mechanic for people to set up their own racing some way, people would participate in it. I mean, that was the biggest thing for Blizzard, right? They had to shut down the private servers because then something about intellectual property rights. If you don't fight to keep control of your stuff, you then lose the ability to monetize it or something. So they were required, even though from what I understand, because the GM of my old guild is on the QA team now at Blizzard, and he said everyone was so excited that people were doing this shit.
Yeah.
The classic stuff. They thought it was so cool. People were that into it, because it means they like, and then
the
they would say,
original
"Wait
product." It's really paying hard. Like just, it's such a big what do you call it? I don't know. Like it must give them so much pride that the thing that they created from the get-go was so good. So you can't not be excited about it.
I'm sure they think that they're people they can convert to. Like there was almost a millisecond of time after playing the private server, I was like, "Fuck yeah, I'm going to play the next expansion and go back to play some World of Warcraft."
Yeah.
I managed to curb that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. It's just it's interesting. Yeah, I mean, I think Raiz brings up a really, really good point. I don't know what the answer to it is. I mean, at least for me, trade is the biggest problem for me the last couple of leagues. I reach a point where I'm just like, this has just annoyed the shit out of me, to the point if the league isn't really great, the league is just sort of okay, which I count Harbinger as an okay league, then that negative of this other aspect of the game drags it down, and I don't want to play anymore.
See, but I think you're going to be pretty happy pretty soon, honestly. Because I feel like the reason why the custom league stuff never went through was because I feel like GGG all of a sudden got all this exposure from crypt playing and everything, and the game really felt like it exploded, and being one of the players who came in that wave of people with the open beta and everything, having heard about racing and custom leagues and all this sort of stuff that they later on backed out of, I felt like PoE, and just looking from my stream and all that stuff, I feel like PoE kind of stopped growing at a certain point, and only really recently, I would say basically when Ascendancy came out, maybe it was due to the downfall of Diablo 3 and that getting less and less popular. I'm not sure, but it felt like it got this like super rapid growth, and isn't it like doubling in player base every league or something like that? And now I feel like now is the point where they're finally like, okay, we've got enough players. The game's growing really freaking fast. We don't want to make an announcement yet, but there might be something on the horizon.
Okay.
Yeah, I feel like now they're going to be more okay with segregating the players. And I mean, in a way, no matter what, it is by far the best way to monetize their game. Like, that would be huge. Like, their custom leagues would be... in monetizing, it would be nuts.
if you look at any other, like, well, if historically what I've played and what I remember when I played back in the day as well, and it's something you see still, custom games where people can set up their own rules has always been a recipe for success. If you look at StarCraft, why was StarCraft got so popular? It spawned off so many like there were so many games that spawned out of the custom leagues. Like Dota literally spawned out of StarCraft 2.
No,
straight
Warcraft
up.
3.
Well, it started in StarCraft, trust me. The whole game mode started being developed in StarCraft. Yeah.
I don't think that's true.
I'm pretty sure. Wasn't it? Wait, which no, there was Warcraft 3 was Dota.
Warcraft 3
was before. I think.
Yeah,
Warcraft
but
3
there was like
before.
there were so many things that started. There were so many things like Aeon of Strife or whatever it was called. It started in StarCraft.
Okay.
Right? Custom leagues. They took custom leagues. They went over to Warcraft 3. StarCraft 2 was the most obscure thing ever for custom leagues. Nobody played for that, and I felt like the game from a non-ladder person died out so fast. Whereas StarCraft 1, it was the greatest experience of my youth in that genre. And look at what they're doing in Overwatch now. They introduced custom games. What do you see? PoE players are actually playing Overwatch. Why? Custom games.
Yeah, that's been really popular. I've been actually surprised. Like with StarCraft, I feel like its rise and downfall was definitely something else. Like when they released the custom leagues, that's just kind of not what the community wanted. Like that could have been something released later on, but I feel like the community wanted a lot of other things like communication and the guilds and all that. That had a lot of issues. But where in Warcraft 3, for instance, where all those systems were there, where the community was there, everybody was in the same spot, everybody had the right mindset, the custom games really further brought people together to continue to play the game and develop something new on top of it because of all the creative people that have spawned things like Dota and Enfos and tower defenses and all that sort of stuff. Yeah. So this, I definitely agree that custom modes would be incredibly popular in a game like Path of Exile.
Yeah, because I'm just waiting for the when do we get our green dude? But that only would.
Well, they're right there. They're out there. Trust me, they're all over the place in PoE.
But they
There's so
have
many
to be
people who
given.
want to get. They're the ones creating PoE trade. They're the ones creating all these custom features we have.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Just
But they have to be given the ability to do it.
Yes,
right.
Exactly.
I mean, they're already. I mean, what is XYZ going to do at this point?
No, but when you say our green dude, you mean like a person that just is a part of the community, goes to GGG, and they work on racing or they work on custom stuff?
No, well, I mean, he's a bad example. I mean, for Path of Diablo, right, where he came along.
Right. Okay. I thought
thing.
Yeah, I thought you meant like they kind of did this thing with him with PvP that they could do with other things too. Okay.
No. That unfortunately, even though I like Green Dude, that ended up being a boondoggle, so it just didn't. And I mean, and I like, just to be clear, for anyone who plays PvP, I'm not insulting PvP. If they did the same thing with racing, the same exact thing would have happened.
Really? You think so?
So let's just say hypothetically, PvP was 2% of the community and racing was 5%. I don't know if that's the right ratio, but it's something like that, whatever the numbers are. So they took 2%, something that 2% of the community participated in, and gave it 10% of their budget. It's like they 5 times it, and it just completely, right? Now, if racing was 5% and they gave it 25% of their budget, 100% the same thing would have happened. Racing would just down like the Hindenburg if they had done that. And I say this is a racing
disagree.
Fan. Okay.
I still disagree because to me PvP was different. The same way PvP flopped in Diablo 3, and it's also the reason why PvP was popular in Diablo 2, is because in Diablo 2 you didn't really have something to do in the very end game as to something to do with your gear. And so in that way, this was a new end game. In Diablo 3, you had an end game. In PoE, you've got an end game. And PvP feels like in PoE, it is incredibly detached from the community. And I don't think, don't get me wrong, I don't think racing is super popular and everybody should do it and blah, blah, blah. I just feel like PvP is something completely separate. You're not killing any monsters. You're not like preparing your character for any sort of PvE event. Like there's no sort of community around it already to tell you things about it. They tried for theirs to be, but it wasn't really that popular. It feels very separate. While racing, you're still doing the same things as you would normally be doing in Path of Exile. You're just trying to do them faster, which is you're still killing monsters, you're still getting through the things, you're still trying to get to maps. You're doing the same thing as you normally would. So I think if they were to do something like that, it would be easier to translate to people, hey, you're still playing PoE, but now you're also trying to beat this other dude. And you're improving your normal game at the same time.
So hypothetically then, so then you completely disagree with how GGG's handled racing the last, say, 18 months or however long it's been, sort of poopy when it comes to racing. Been a while, really. Like, do you think that it's just horribly wrong and they're losing money? This is a bad way of doing things, or what?
I don't know about the last 18 months. The thing is, I feel like they definitely missed a window. There was that with Crip and everything. Racing used to be, now we're saying like racing is maybe 5% of the community. I remember when I started playing PvP, when I started playing PoE, racing was like everything. Everything everybody ever would ever talk about. Everybody was racing. And so in a way, if they would say, okay, here's PoE, but at the same time, here's PoE racing, which is something you can also do, they definitely missed a huge opportunity there, and I definitely think it has lost them a lot of money. Now, would that be the case right now with PoE with racing not really being that popular? I don't know if it's losing them money or not. I would think that, I mean, I really have no idea. I don't think it would lose them money, but it definitely wouldn't gain them a whole lot of money. Maybe the way like you open a restaurant and you're losing money at first, but then eventually it gets okay because more and more people stop by. In that way, you could look at it, that racing wouldn't be something super popular, but it wouldn't really draw people away from the game, and eventually would get to a certain point of recognition from the community. But initially, it probably wouldn't be great right now.
It's interesting you say that, because for me, the biggest thing that they did that really hurt racing is you didn't get to keep your character. That was a big thing.
Yeah.
It just goes to some bullshit thing. You're like, what did I just spend this time on? And then, of course, there was the whole, they had currency rewards and then they got rid of it. I never understood, because you are playing you don't get to keep the character. So then why not get some reward? You've done something for 3 hours, get some tangible reward, immediate reward in the thing. They really and then rewards were 2 weeks at the start of the league. Then it was 4 weeks. Now isn't it 6 weeks until you get your rewards at the start of the league?
Even more massive back then, because back then there were no leagues. It was just hardcore and softcore. So if you made a character and you got to
keep playing it right after you were done.
Yeah. It just works so well.
But what you're suggesting is something that competes with the core game of the PoE's core game, right? You're suggesting that racing should compete on gaining currency and all of that.
Does it have to?
Well, going back to the currency system.
Okay. Yeah.
Right. If you have currency rewards, well then it somehow has to compete, and then you're competing against your own game, right? So you wanna get people involved with racing when they're already involved in the game. For what reason? Right? You talked about how they lost a lot of money, but then if you're investing time into racing, instead of like you're pushing people into the racing aspect instead of pushing people into the actual game, right. And so, I don't know if they're losing money, and they're better at creating an ARPG, not at creating a race league. And I think we've seen that they're better at that. So it's like, well, do they want to teach their entire staff or program like does GDG want to go into racing and creating leagues and all that? Is that the best way that they can grow? I don't think so.
I don't think it competes, because you even bring in the currency aspect. So, and in my way, they could present it as like double dipping your currency, because you're racing and you're gaining currency if you do well. So that drives you to do better. And as you're learning to race to get that currency, you're also learning to play faster in the core game of PoE, therefore you're getting more currency. So in a way, you're like double dipping your time. It doesn't have to compete in my eyes. But it only does now.
I just don't see how it would generate them more money. If that's your point.
I think that the key part is the currency
Not
aspect.
really.
I understand why we got rid of awarding people currency. I do think the big problem is every single reward of any kind was completely decoupled from the game. So people, unless you had an extremely long horizon view and you knew you were going to do 100 races, there was virtually no benefit to racing other than maybe a point of pride. So I mean, the thing is, let's just say hypothetically, even if this is not true, you got to keep your character in whatever league. Right, you race till 20 and then you got to go into a league. Every single fucking streamer would say, if you want to make every guide would say this, if you want to make a new character, wait until the next race. Start whatever character you want to play. See if it's fun. Maybe you'll win a demi. Who the fuck, you'll have fun racing against people. Then you can keep playing the character, and if it sucks, you've just wasted a race, which you got a side benefit of fun. But since they made it where, as Raiz said, in the Crip era, your character went to hardcore and you got to keep playing it or whatever, it just went into garbage time. It made things completely decoupled, and I don't know, people weren't invested in it. And I just feel like they've sort of been sabotaging it over time. Because as Raiz says,
I think they lost an opportunity.
Racing was the big, racing was the big thing.
Yeah,
and then they went away from. But I mean, I don't really, I feel like I'm biased because I like it.
I like it as well. I do agree that I think that they did lose a big opportunity. I don't think that regarding how much they lost, I don't know. And how much they had to invest in it. Like, I don't know.
I think they lost a lot.
I don't know exactly how good they actually are at this, at racing, at creating like speed running and all that. I don't know if people. That's the thing. Do we know how much of how invested any of them are in? Like, I know some people are invested in this sort of thing, but do they have experience with it? Like, how?
They in a way pioneered it. I mean,
speedrunning has been a thing forever.
Yeah, it's been a thing for a while, but I feel like, around the time when PoE racing was around, that's when like speedrunning was really at its peak, where all these events were starting up, the AGDQs and whatnot, and like everything like that. So in a way, I feel like they were part of the thing that really pushed speedrunning to like a whole new level, and it could still be that. I just don't know. Like when you say, would it gain them money? I don't know. How big is that market?
Mm-hmm.
How huge is speedrunning really? Because that's what it is. I mean, it's speedrunning, right?
Yeah.
And that's a term thrown around often. And when there's an AGDQ, 300, 400, 500,000 people are watching it.
Like
that's pretty massive.
Yeah.
If your game has a massive event for that, that's pretty huge. That could draw a lot of attention.
Okay, so I think this actually ties into trading as well, real well, because when you look at how they invest, so you talk about speedrunning and who do they want to hit, right? What is their target audience with all this? Well, what does speedrunning do on ADDQ? It takes like the best of the best and then shows them to the world, right? It's a very limited amount of players who actually get to partake in this.
Yeah.
Usually only one from a game. That's not a lot.
Yeah, that's
right?
a great point.
And you put them up. You can't then include all your player base and then say, well, at the end you're gonna be. No, that's not how it works.
Well, you could.
Well,
what if there's a tournament? What if there's eliminations? Where if there's a lead up?
Oh, and I would love that.
Every
like
other
on a personal point, I would love that.
Yeah.
I
mean, even if you look at something like Smash Bros or whatever, you have to qualify for a tournament, and then that way you're engaging the community. And if you're not good enough, then you're not good enough. Is PoE the right game for something like that? Probably not. I mean, for people to fight in the pits, it doesn't have that sort of competitive aspect to it.
And
again, that's kind of something D3 has devolved into, now, where it's like, I feel like D3, when a lot of people talk about it, it's like this. That's all there is in that game anymore. Being competitive on the season with the ladder. I feel like that's everything that's left in that game. That's everything anybody ever talks about.
Yeah.
I mean, it's devolved into that, which is not a good thing, but still shows that there's at least some people trying to look for something like that. It's just a matter of really how much resources and how much this would cost them. But yeah, just to go back to the initial question, I really don't know if it would gain them money at this point.
Because I do think I agree with you. I think they lost a big opportunity. I think they had an opportunity to take this somewhere that would be really good. I think the mistake was trying to include the entire community. I think that's one of the mistakes that they do. Like me personally, I think that's one of the mistakes they do. Every time they try and implement something, they try and like appease everyone, right? So if we implement trading, everyone, or now if we do PvP,
fuck the community.
Everyone needs to do PvP. If we do racing, everyone needs to do racing.
No, but that's exactly. I mean, that's the exact
but that's
point.
just the wrong thing to do. You can't accommodate everyone all the time. If you're transparent, I think, and they can do the same thing with racing. What we want to accommodate. So back to the custom leagues, right? Where trading is into the bad spot. Clear speed meta is terrible, right? On whatever we think, right? That's other people have different ideas, but if you can communicate that we're using small resources to accommodate for this group because it's important to us, as long as you communicate it and not hide it like Xbox, then you can make it you can resonate with players a lot better. Like look at Dota, right? We have the racing community raises money for their events and they get pooled into GGG and then they spend it on that. Yay!
Yeah, that's fine. I've said this before. I wish there was a race pack or a trade pack or and they're like $5 or $10, and everyone can buy a pack and it goes towards, there's 2 or 3 the community votes on thing that they want to have changed, whatever it is.
Oh wow, that's huge. Yeah,
I mean, I don't know why they don't do that because other game companies clearly do that. Very, like Dota with the hats and the compendium or whatever.
I think they've kind of stated in the past that it's not even a matter of them struggling money wise. Small indie developer, by the way. I think it's just a matter of like talent, right? They just don't have enough people living in that area and people willing to move who are actually good at things like that. Even though obviously it's a huge company at this point. It's a massive developer.
Indie developer though.
Yeah. Indie.
Yeah, okay. Indie.
Free game, no bitching.
No, I mean, it's a really good point. I wonder. See, that's the thing is, I don't know. It was such a strange announcement to read, the whole trade thing, and then I actually told Noogie I hadn't even looked at the site because I've just been busy in my real life, so I don't check Reddit every half hour like I was for a long time. So I checked Reddit 3 hours after the announcement. I'm like, whoa, what is this thing in my top 25 from PoE? So it has to be something big. So I didn't even have to look at it. I read all these comments of people saying, oh, that's terrible, and the design and stuff. It just makes me confused, like, because GG does seem like they're concerned with all this stuff and allocating their developers and their whatever to this stuff. So it makes me wonder, so what's the long-term plan then for trade? Are they really going to develop? They're going to have somebody who does this now, or they didn't for the longest time? Like, why now all of a sudden is this a thing?
It's so weird to me every time because I feel like they almost picked the worst possible time because this is when the PoE community is at its worst. Like, they want all these things, nothing's going on, nobody's playing anymore. The people who are playing are the people who are just angry all the time. Whenever anything happens, they get their pitchforks and want to go. And now they release this? Like, that is so bizarre to me.
It's calculated.
It just came out of nowhere.
No,
well, is it?
It's okay. From something out of my personal pet peeve list, the catch the cheaters map hacking thing was done at the absolute, is it nadir, whatever the lowest point, right, of PoE population. That's when they released the thing and caught the people when there was nobody playing PoE. So I mean, it was 100% on purpose. Like, come on, don't give me this. Like, it was randomly ready at the lowest point ever in the history of the. Oh, what a coincidence! It's the same. They do these announcements at these times very specific.
So you think they're like we're all lab rats, the people who are still playing. So it like only reaches a small part of the community. They can get the feedback, and then they.
I actually think that they do stuff like that. Yeah. That wouldn't surprise me. No, that wouldn't surprise me.
They're not. See, this thing is, so if your two choices are they're stupid or they're not stupid, I always go with not stupid. So to me, it's on purpose. Always. I always think it's on purpose. Just like when I love Chris. When Chris says some of the stuff he says, which seems like it could have come out of some PR director's mouth because it's on, I mean, that's kind of his job a little bit to say some of the stuff he says. So to calm people down because people are freaking out about all sorts of stuff. So with the pitchforks.
Honestly,
But
the one, yeah.
okay, so there's on the one hand there's the response, right? If it's gonna be negative, it's better to have it at a low point. So there is that, but there's also the, well, if you like look at something with the whole, they had to implement. There's a lot of hype and there are a lot of people invested during the beta, right? I would say there's actually so you had the MTX new MTX system that kind of bombed a bit, right? There's a lot of talk about that. So introducing stuff like that when there's a lot of people playing might not be a smart thing. The same thing with trade. If a lot of people engage in it and it's not really ready, it's not really to just not like it's not just because we don't want to expose a lot of people to the idea of it. It's more that we don't want to have it failing. Yeah. Like we would rather just have the people who are engaged, we can try it out. It's more of we can have a small beta test now because it's not like people are like in the beginning of the league.
Like imagine if like all of this is like the sole reason to all of this, and they're just like, these people are gonna play anyway. We can fuck with them all we want. Like let's release this, let's release that, and then just make it disappear when everybody's playing. These guys aren't going to leave. They've been here for years. Why the hell would anybody play our game right now?
I think there's definite some thought about that. They're like, these are the fucking hardcore people playing. So we'll just shove that shit out there and they'll fucking beta test it. So
oh no.
Oh my god. Have we seen a response? I just want to say, have we seen a response from the XYZ guy?
No.
Like on
I don't. Okay, so is that an issue?
Well, maybe not for me as someone who's supported his website for a long time. I think it matters a little bit. I mean, maybe.
Oh, but you should like why can't GGG release their thing alongside? They're supporting him still. Every side is still supported equally. They're the same features on every single thing. Why shouldn't GGG have it?
I think GGG is doing it the right way because I think from the way the website is looking and the way they have it on their website, I think they're approaching it as if people want to use XYZ, keep on using XYZ. It seems to be like more condensed in a way. If you know how to use it well, it's definitely like, obviously the GGG website is still in beta, but it seems that everything's like more compact, while the PoE website seems to be more like for newer players so that they can easily get into it. I mean, if I started playing a new game and people told me, go to PoE.trade, no RMT, by the way, I'd be like, what? I don't want to go there. It's going to install some shit on my computer. So their website seems to be more new user friendly.
Yeah.
And I think it really, actually, you asked me earlier, what would be the thing that would make me happy about trading? And GGG developing their own website in a way is a massive stepping stone for that. Because the thing that would make me the happiest would be functionality, right? So them adding the way that we can just not whisper AFK people or people who aren't online, updating the API, that's a massive amount of functionality that I really love. But on top of it, if they are able to implement this website into the game where I don't have to tab out and go to some external something, I think that would be enough for me, honestly, because then it would feel like a real game.
At that point, if they implement it into the actual game, should they allow for the third party still, or should they actually shut off the API?
Ooh, maybe that's their goal. I mean, they've said in the past, like, we're having a lot of issues because people are popping off on our API. I remember when they shut off at the start of this league, right? Was it this league? Yeah, they shut off the API because too many people were constantly requesting things and their website was breaking and stuff, right? And people like couldn't use ladder trackers that sort of They only had like one guy who had access to the API. Everybody else was completely shut out. So maybe this was it scared them. Maybe they were like, okay, we can't ever allow something like this to ever happen again, and they don't want to be dependent on people who aren't a part of the company.
It's just so funny to hear that statement, because that's an argument that people have been making for like 3 or 4 years, and
Yeah.
it just, I don't know, looking at that site and looking at what they did it really take someone a year to put that together? That's
God, I hate it because people even argue with me in my chat because I'm like, what the fuck? It took them a year? Like, are you crazy? And people are like, whoa, wait a minute. Maybe they had the idea for a year and now they start developing. And it's like, what the fuck? Are you kidding? Like, they haven't had an idea about doing this like for. They must have been thinking about trading for every year. Like, what are you talking about?
Right. You know, and Noogie and I were talking about a little bit. I'm curious what your thoughts are with their community. And you had mentioned communication, but we were saying how most of the manifesto, I think, has very good points to be made. Right? There's insight into what's going on, but unfortunately, they throw out a stat, or I mean, I guess it's inevitably going to happen. One thing will be memed, and I can understand this. One, I've worked on it for a year, is going to be memed to death because that's all I could focus on. They spent a year on this, like.
Yeah, 25k. Yes, by the way, game is balanced, right?
Yeah, 20, right, exactly.
Just go through. Nothing matters. 25k. Like,
yeah,
come
right.
on. And no, I get that. Although I disagree with you saying that most of it made sense, because a lot of it didn't make sense.
Okay,
I
what
think
did
everything made sense.
Okay, so they say items matter, trade is important. It's been like fucking 5 years. Come on, when the game started growing.
Okay, I see. Yeah,
it's like saying racing matters to us, guys, but also there's not going to be any racing season. Go fuck yourself.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Consequences of easy trading. That basically goes down to the point that I was talking about previously, where the game has sped up tenfold. Where I think easy trading would just not be nearly as impactful as a whole as the changes they've been making to the core game. So if they want to increase the longevity, how much a single player spends on their game by the time they uninstall it and move on to the next thing of 1,000 games in their Steam library, I feel like they kind of work against themselves. And then they say easy trade reduces the number of times a character improves their items. I also disagree with that, because when you're trading, you're not playing the game. So if you want people to play your game, why do you want them trading? So
Well, they consider that
therefore,
part of the game.
yeah, if you consider that part of the game, then I can see that. But I don't consider going to a website playing Path of Exile. I don't know. Just yeah, maybe it's just a thing for me. Easy trade reducing drop rates. Yeah, it basically boils down to the initial point where it's like people drop 100 times more than they used to. So it just doesn't follow what they used to do. And then easy trade will make the disparity between different players too great. I also really heavily disagree with this, because again, I feel like the people who really know how to use PoE.trade are incredibly rich, because it is so freaking easy to flip and move things around and trade well, and knowing what things cost is a huge deal. Like, it makes a massive difference for your PoE experience overall. Well, in Diablo 3, everybody was like, well, I'm just flipping. I just sit on the auction house. Everybody had access to that knowledge. Everybody knew how to do it. Everybody would look up guides. It was a much more common thing to gain wealth through trading, while in PoE, it's just not really a thing. So I feel like, if anything, it would balance out the playing field for a lot of people. And like,
you're saying, so
there's a lot more points.
You're saying what would having an auction house would balance things out, is what you're saying?
I wouldn't
PoE?
necessarily say having an auction house, but having a system that isn't as punishing as it is right now for the players who are newer to the game or don't have an idea about trading. Because when you start playing PoE, it's gonna take you years to figure out like how much something's going to be worth it. You play the game for 2 months, you've played a single build, you finally figured out how much the items for your single build are worth. By the way, there's like a million other
Yeah,
items that you have
builds.
no clue about,
Right.
and then the next league starts and it just completely rewrites the entire system due to balance changes. It's just the way the economy works. And I mean, obviously, if you're a newer player or playing 2 months into the league, the economy is completely different than comparably to like the first month of the league. So they have to completely relearn everything again, which like fucks
Can I-
everybody over.
Can I
Go
go?
ahead.
Okay, so on the easy trade would make disparity between players too great, the difference. So you said you don't agree with that, Rise?
I think that's the case right now.
Well, yeah, that is the case right now. That is what we have right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, the disparity is huge.
Yeah,
Therefore,
it is.
making yeah.
He's saying an auction house would
No,
fix
but
it. whereas
okay,
GGG is saying
but
an
the
auction
thing
house
is, the point here is the they're making the difference in magnitude. It's because they're looking at none to low traders versus the like currently, right? So anyone right now who's doing low to none, like no trade to low trade, versus those who do a lot of trade. If you then make it even easier, that disparity grows. That's what they're talking about.
I in my head,
Because if you don't
it's the
engage in
opposite.
trade, or you do very little, and then everyone else has an easy time, well, then you push more people into the trading aspect, and then you feel even worse because now instead of only 10% going, being that much more powerful, you maybe increase that to 50, which then encourages you to do even more trading. And that's the point that they're making.
Yeah, but if trading is important, and as you said before, they would consider the core game, trading a part of the core game and a part of the experience, wouldn't more people being at the same playing field when it comes to trading be a good thing in that way?
Yes, if trading is harder, then it's a good thing. If everyone can trade equally but worse, then it's a good thing.
I don't. How do you? I don't. Okay, so the way I look at this,
They want everyone to engage in some form of trade, right? But they want those who engage in a lot of trade to not have the same kind of power over those who don't.
Yeah, but if you trade a lot, like I compared this to like playing the stocks, for instance, or something, right? So if I were to go right now in the market and try to, play in the field with the big boys and get the big stocks, and like I have no clue about that, zero, nothing whatsoever. I'm a new player to PoE. I cannot compare to these people who have been doing this for years because it's such a niche thing. Not a lot of people trade like that. But if it were to be more popular and there would be more accessibility to information in that way, and would be more accessible where you wouldn't have to have like millions of dollars to get into it or have a budget that you can potentially give up on, it would be more evened out. Therefore, the people who would be now at the lowest level would become the average level or whatever, right? At that point, and then they would be closer to the people who are at the very top. Like that's how I look at it, at least. When I say average, I mean obviously average from one period to the other period, right? I don't mean because average is average.
Well, it's interesting because I actually think the GGGs, they're hypocrites a little bit because they say they don't want. No, I'm just saying they don't want this easy trading, right? But yet every single thing that's been added to the game has made the acquisition of loot easier. Say in the last 3 years.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying too.
Yeah,
that's the thing.
Yeah, that's the thing. So it's kind of like, so they say they don't want this thing to ever happen. Oh my God. Like, oh no, something might happen over here. Meanwhile, over here, they're just shoveling money out the door to anyone who shows up with a bag. Just, slam it in my bag. I've got a huge pile of Parandus coins. I get all the cool shit. So, I mean, what's the fucking difference between the two? There's zero difference. They
That's
just
what
have
I'm
this
saying.
psychological. Yeah, they're like psychologically like, oh, trading, touched me inappropriately when I was a child, so we're never going to ever deal with it ever again. But everything else is totally fine. And okay.
That brings
brings
me to a
what I'm
question.
saying.
Okay.
Yeah.
Should they just make trading easy?
Absolutely. And then they should remove some of the stupid ways you get here in dumb ways.
Okay, so the only way I really see that, if they make trading easy, they have to make bind and equip, or bind on either equip or pick up.
No, well, okay.
Snap.
So this is the David Brevik. This is the David Brevik.
Yeah. It is.
And so the problem with that is now, And I want to let's just get some caveats out of the way. He designs games, knows more than I will ever know about game design, knows more than I probably ever will about Diablo. He does not know more than I know about PoE. Now, I'd love to have him on the podcast. We have a nice discussion about it. Some of the points he's made in the past do not apply to Path of Exile. They actually apply very well to Diablo.
You don't need to make everything, though. Buy them, pick up, and trade, or all that.
Okay, well, so then we can have a discussion about that. The bind on pickup thing worked in World of Warcraft because the items were, for the most part, exactly homogeneity. There was homogeneity across items, much like Diablo 3. That was the problem with Diablo 3. Path of Exile, on the other hand, when it's working well, although I would argue the last couple of years it has not been, where there's been a push towards uniques, which of course are homogeneous because they're exactly the same. They're copies of each other. If rare items are more powerful out in the marketplace has a way to handle that, right? You can trade items, you can do all this stuff. There are going to be mid-tier items, there can be top tier, there can be low tier. So his argument is completely bunk, because like if you just took PoE from 2014 before all this crap came in and just gave us an auction house, I think the game would function maybe the same as it is right now. So so what you've done right now in the last 3 years to me is the worst of both worlds. You've turned off people who don't like all the stupid bullshit. Although I know some people like the gameplay, and I think that's great. But then they're also still annoyed about trade, right? So why else would they introduce solo self-out? You cannot tell me that they introduced that because they're thrilled about what's going on with these aspects of the game. So therefore, that is an insight to what their true thought process is on what's going on. They do not like what's happening. So they're trying to do these band-aid solutions instead of fixing the underlying problem, which was trading really sucked a long time ago, and it was huge barriers to entry. So to give people who didn't have the time to spend 10 hours on the computer being like, no, it's 22.5 chaos per exalt or whatever, they're like, here, we'll give you Forsaken Masters, we'll give you Perandus, we'll give you Breach, we'll give you all this stuff, right? So they kept adding this stuff as a proxy to fixing trade is what they've done. So, sure. And that's how we end up where we are.
Divination cards. Divination cards, I think, also were a big part of that.
I forgot. That's the clear best, almost the best example. Exactly. Yeah. So, it's just been a strange sort of journey. And like the argument, this is another thing I never understand. They'll say, well, at this scale, such and such and such and such. Well, I've read a lot about EVE Online since the last time we had talked about trade, and EVE Online just people that fucking do whatever and it works out. So it's like, I don't really know that I buy into the argument that it must be bind on pickup. Now they're going to say something about, oh, well, we want conversion of players. We want someone who plays the game to continue to play over a long time. So we have to introduce artificial barriers to keep them playing the game. Okay, I think there's a point to that. So then create more end game for people to do stuff with it. You know what I mean? Solve a problem and then work on longevity of whatever, right?
Here's a question. So so let's go away from the bind and pickup and all that stuff, right? So let's say, because Raiz and I have just come from Grim Dawn. We've been playing that a lot, right? And it seems in Grim Dawn that rares are actually a lot more interesting, especially MI, right? It's something called MIs, monster infrequents, specific rare items that only drop off specific monsters. You can't craft them; they drop off that, right? You would still be able to trade them, but have them being, so let's say you reduce drop rates on, like, say, uniques, because that's what you want, like more of a flow of
and be more specific too. Don't some of them have very specific
like, they're for certain skills, they're for
Grenadier, right?
Yes, they're for specific skills, right? So there could be one for Spark, there can be one for everything, essentially. And some are more generic, some are more specific, some like work on 2 different skills at the same time, and all that kind of stuff.
Like +1 to your entire subclass and then +2 to some specific skill.
And they're just as powerful as uniques.
Okay.
So because is one of the problems with trading that uniques are just too powerful?
Well, I would argue that's a problem with the game itself. Doesn't matter. Yeah, but also
is that also tied into trading, because it makes trade a much easier. When the only thing you're looking for is a unique, the time you have to spend on trade severely diminishes, because you're like, okay, I need that, and that. That's 4 items, all unique. Okay, name in, done. There's no like specific search for all these extra things. So if you make trade easy, but you make gearing the character harder or more interesting, well, interesting is a relative term, but you know, like if it's not just searching for a specific item, and we go more over that you can use a unique, you can also use like these more rare items, like that solve the same issue sometimes, and the rate at which they drop is closer together. So now you kind of split the entire item pool into more different items, but with the same amount of power.
Right.
But does it have the same amount of power? I don't know. Wouldn't it just boil down to you need the specific item for that specific thing, except rather than like it just has, you know, a higher variance of like different statistics on it.
But then you lower the
plus
unique
the
drop rate as well, right? So the accessibility of the uniques is now lower. So now you kind of force players out to search for other options. You make it harder to get X thing, but you give them a wider range of options.
So you see, the tricky part is that I never understood the whole like obsession with rare items. Like when I played D2 and everybody's like classic is the best because items matter. I really enjoy Lord of Destruction for the rune ward items and how specific they are and like the goal for it. Like I don't know, in my head it just works. And something that people are always really freaking opposed to in PoE pretty consistently from what I've seen is like set items, and people always think, oh, it's going to be like Diablo 3 and I don't want that. Like, wouldn't this system kind of end up in the same boat where it's like there is only one optimal choice no matter what, even if it's like a single item? If there's two items that fulfill the same thing, like wouldn't it just be for that specific build? But then I guess there's such a high variance of builds in PoE that even if you're using the same skill, you could use two different items. I'm not sure. So like for me, that's the confusion.
No, I just think it's the whole, if a rare, you know, let's say there's a rare you could get that's better than Chavrons, but it's a million times rarer. So then there's still something to go towards in terms of the progression. I think that's sort of even if it's a total pipe dream to get the, you know, plus 2 to your skill and all the other stuff you want on it.
But it's there. But still, you can farm for it. There's a monster that drops it.
Really? I really don't like that stuff. Like a headhunter to me is ridiculous. Like maybe if those like super chase items wouldn't, like I don't feel like they need to be nearly as powerful as a headhunter is. A chase item like that. They would definitely need to be cool, and they would have like they would be better than the average thing, even if they're accomplishing the same thing but just a higher number of it. Like that would be okay. But like a headhunter is so scary to me. The item, it breaks the game. So if these items would also break the game, I don't know if I would like that.
No, I don't think they would need to break the game. It's just they would offer equivalent power. They would be super rare to get, and they would be like the variance on them would be very high. So you would actually be incentivized to trading with them. But they would also offer a certain play style. But like as long as they're not like they don't need to be headhunter power. Like if they could do things with skills and whatever, or just be good for that X thing. Right, it's pretty easy to limit it, right? Like Spark gets 20% more cast speed or whatever. Like this is very generic, right? But that could be one of the roles on there. That's not headhunter power, but it's powerful enough that you would go for it.
Yoji is suggesting Skyforts. Yeah, I mean, it's not like I have an opinion on this. I'm just like throwing out thoughts because I'm trying to understand it. Because often, yeah, this is something that I haven't necessarily thought about. So it's really interesting to hear you guys' opinion.
It's just I'm trying to like just brainstorm what is it that we want from trade, and what is it we want from the game, and how do you combine the two, and kind of get to a better place where you don't just speed up trade and then it just breaks the game, but where you can have fast trade, like fast and easy trade. Because I think the wrong solution here, and that they're really hell-bent on, we have to keep trade complicated. But why?
Right.
Yes. Like why does it have to be annoying? Like,
but yeah, I mean,
they could have probably just one point here, because I think they could have probably put in the AFK D&D thing a long time ago.
Oh, sure.
But only now they do it. It's because it's like one of the only solutions they have, because they're so determined on not having it be easy.
Right. I think it just comes down to they've made a miscalculation in terms of, and I come back to it. When I have a problem buying a 10 or 15 chaos item, again, please don't rip me apart for that number, whatever the number is, something of some moderate value. If it's a little annoying getting it because it's relatively rare, well, I understand that. That's just how the system works. So, okay, maybe that guy's not here, he's offline. Maybe I try to find another one that fits into my build. It's like I've said before, it's when I'm trying to buy. I can't even remember now. I have PTSD thinking about it. Screaming Essences of Fears, and they're worth 1 chaos, and there's 400,000 of them for sale. And the first 50 people I message are all AFK, and I cannot. Now, if you tell me the AFK D&D thing's going to solve this, well, I'm going to give it a shot. But that's such a small trade; it has no consequence in the grand scheme of things. Someone has some nightmare scenario where, like, oh no, someone will come in and buy all of them and such, but that's the whole point. There's so many of them for sale, so many people participate. An auction house would solve all those problems. Instead of those people, like Raiz talked about, who could exploit because they spend so much time trading, it would lower all that stuff and make it easier for 99% of people to get whatever bullshit item they want for 1 chaos or 1 elk. And like, I just feel like they've miscalculated, because I will tell you at this point, every time I'm trying to do something interesting I'm not doing it to make a lot of money, I'm doing it just for fun on my stream, and it's the amount of effort is so outsized compared to the value of the item. I've got 5,000 chaos, and I literally cannot pay someone to give me their fucking things.
Yeah, but
like,
that's the thing. That's the biggest problem for me when people say something like that. Oh, somebody's gonna come in and buy out all this shit. You know who does that right now? Fucking bots.
Yeah.
They just message 1 million people a second. They can trade 24/7. Like, you're promoting the worst way people can potentially be exploited by something like this, because it's best to do it with something that is automated that other players don't have access to.
Right.
So it's such a high variance. It's not an even playing field at all.
And so you're saying an auction house would solve that problem?
Well, an auction house wouldn't solve the problem of bots. I mean, more and more,
right.
They would still be there, but it would still be available to players in an easier way, right? Where a bot can, again, message 100 people and do this trade, while a human being can't message 100 people and go to their hideout every time and every second and blah, blah, blah. Now they could just click 10 of them and they would just have them, rather than doing what you were doing, where, you just lose your fucking mind when you're trading for essences.
Right. I mean,
but the bots would still be there.
Right. Well, and the thing is, who can? But that's what I never understand about it. They're like, well, so I would love if there was an essence bot out there, and I would just buy from the bot, and the bot made some money off me. I would pay a small premium for that. Like, what would be so what would be the fucking? This is what I never understand about it. Again, I understand maybe we don't want to allow bots for flipping 5 or 10 chaos items, or I don't know. I still come back to, there's just so. The system right now is exploitable primarily because it's not automated. So people can list things for bullshit prices they do not intend to sell it for. And so GGG has incentivized bad behavior right now. And then the argument against it is some mythical thing that's never happened in PO. I don't even know. Like,
trade interaction.
Trade interaction or something. My God, like, can we just let's just improve. This is what I never understand. Their argument for so many parts of the game are, for why they're doing things that I don't like, is because Moors, you don't represent the 80% of the people. And yet somehow in this one area where I make a ton of money if I participate in the trade system right now, and I hate it because I would much rather have the convenience and make less money. So I'm arguing for what would benefit the 85% of the people out there, 90% of people. And somehow that is the one area where, oh God, can't have that. We got to make sure this, whatever.
And play the game at the same time, by the way.
Right.
And we have to kind of remember that the point of the game is to kill monsters, right?
Yes, exactly. The less time I spend in my hideout ready to fucking murder everyone is less time I can go out there and kill the monsters. So it's like, it's just so bizarre. I can't understand the logic. It makes no fucking sense. It really makes no sense. And honestly, to me, it's the same stupid bullshit logic that came about when they did not want to have allocated loot. right? They were just against it from the start, and they're never going to think about it, and fuck everyone who thinks differently. It literally took every single person in the entire community at the time, which was like 5,000 people, posting in one thread to be like, no, you're wrong, before they were like, okay, I guess we're wrong about this. There's 2 of us, there's 5,000 of you, I guess we'll give in. And even then, it took them a year to actually give in to instance loot. I mean, sometimes they're wrong about stuff. That's the part I never understand. And like, I can't believe it's 2017. It's almost 2018. How are we having this discussion about trade? My God.
That's the worst part.
How? Yeah.
I looked like the biggest asshole because when we were having Bay class, there was like a question about trade, and I was just like, no, don't go into it, guys. Don't get trapped. No trading. And then people in the comments were like, why the fuck is Raiz shutting everybody up? If he doesn't have an opinion, let everybody else talk. What if Cute Dog doesn't know things about summoners, and he would be like, shut up whenever everybody wanted to talk about summoners? It's like, no, this fucking thing, you talked about it a million times. Like, come on.
Right. No, and that's fair. And yeah, no, you're right. It is a trap at this point. I mean, it's
a trap. Yeah,
it's a total trap. I mean, it's just a waste of. I feel like to me, it's just confusing. So
what are we doing here?
I think GG is listening, right? And as a community, we have to come together, right? And we have to provide them with good ideas and way. Like, we don't need to give them the solution, but we need to like be vocal about what is the actual issue instead of just going on a rant on how they failed all the way through, right? And what it is we actually what are the things that we want to, as players, want to see and like want to change. I think that has to be the focus, and I think they are doing things. I think they are listening.
Yeah.
Right, like you see the AFK stuff and all that, right? They're constantly listening, and I kind of
maybe.
Well, they're listening. Whether or not they're responding is a different thing, right?
Yeah, I mean that's the thing. I don't think they listen all the time, but I don't think that they have intentionally ignored this. Right, because they've talked about it before. That's in okay. Well, so then to me, that's doing nothing is also a solution or an answer.
Yeah, doing nothing is doing something.
Correct, because you've chosen to do nothing.
Yeah.
So, and I come back to they did the public API, right? And then there was no thought beyond. There really was literally no thought beyond that. Like so what if we need to tune this? Has there been any tuning when it comes to that stuff? I don't think there has. There's just, and so that in fact just exacerbated the problem. They thought it would like help things. I actually think, I mean, as stupid as a point it is to make, GG's made this point. High barriers to entry controlled things for a long time. So it was really annoying with acquisition and God, what was the first one by African guy? Fuck. What's the thing before acquisition that people used? I can't remember.
Procurement.
Procurement, acquisition. Those were oh my God. So, dealing with that kept people honest. And the GG's like, oh, we're just gonna, because it's kind of not cool. And I agree with that. Then they're like, we'll just let everyone do it. So then it's like, wait a minute, what if all of a sudden everyone can list every bullshit item they've ever seen in the history of their lives? How is that going to fix trade? Well, here's 2 years later.
I think the reason why. Okay, so I definitely think they were listening, and I definitely think that they were listening and going, we just don't agree with you. And part of the reason of that is the fact that from what I've seen, looking at like new streamers and a lot of the feedback that I get from newer players, because there's been a lot of that since 3.0, there's just so many new players, is that it's not an immediate problem to them. And those people composed a large amount of the community, the majority, maybe even, And so to us who have been playing for a long time, trading is fucking annoying,
right?
But to those people, it's like, I'll just do a couple trades. It's not that big of a deal, It hasn't gotten to that boiling point for them, and so for GGG, it's not really, maybe not even a priority. Maybe they really don't think about it that much, We're like losing our shit here, and they're just like,
I think they view it as a huge problem.
Part of the community, but
No way. I think this is one of the, this is like on at this point with how player perception and probably the amount of complaints they get in their emails like to the support on trade and how bad it is, and oh, I had to play right to this guy 10 times and FK all this shit. Oh, it's probably on this, it's like their desync right now on the list of problems. I would assume
Maybe,
that it
yeah.
was. I think like on the list of their problems, it's like it's their new desync, right?
But then why didn't it get the
Yeah,
when
but
was desync fixed?
Because it's so hard to
2.0?
fix for them. They can't. They don't have the perfect solution.
Yeah, that's
Oh, okay.
that's what I agree with. Yeah, that there is a system. It's not like there's no system. It's not like it was the trading through the forums. There is a system. Therefore, it might not be on the list of priorities. It does remind me though, the player interaction thing. My recent player interaction, in which and this was the most interaction I've had in the longest time, by the way, was when I entered somebody's hideout to trade an item and accidentally went into his map, and he called me a fucker, reported me, and put me on ignore. And I just accidentally entered his map.
Someone made a
There's
good
also
point.
that.
Someone in chat actually made a good point. Their point of view, as explained in the manifesto, is extremely simple. They polarized it: loot plus bad trade, or no loot plus good trade.
Right.
Even though there are options in between. So do you think they've actually fallen into that trap of just, because I feel like that's the Reddit trap as well. Like we polarize everything, where it's like there's only two solutions and there's like no middle ground.
Right, the Goldilocks solution. No, but that was sort of my point with the whole permanent loot. Right, it was the same. I believe they were in the same polarized thing. They either wanted no loot at all, right? Because that was Chris's want. Was, I guess, was what Diablo 2 is like, where nothing's allocated at all. It just drops and you just frenzy to pick it up. Versus they thought, so then the other thing was there were never, why even show anyone other people's loot, right? Because if they can never pick it up, what's the point? Which I guess is what Diablo 3 did. So yeah, so it's like, but yet there is a middle ground, which is kind of what they did, which was but it took them a while to like figure out, okay, well, what is the middle ground? And I do think for me that's the problem with trade, is really why can't we have a bit more of a middle ground solution? I'm not going to get everything that I want. I know that's okay, but like it just feels like there's been virtually no progress.
See, but that's the thing. I'm the worst. I'm the worst when it comes to that, really, because I'm the fence sitter. I'm not really giving a strong opinion as to what they should do. Do I want an auction house? I don't fucking know. Like, I have no idea. Do I want another system? Well, I don't know. What are you thinking about? I haven't experienced these things. Am I fine with the current trade? I mean, it's aggravating, but now that they removed this, I guess I'm okay with it. But I would kind of prefer something that would allow me to kill more monsters rather than sit in my hideout. But I don't really have a solution, and I feel like a lot of other people are in that boat, where it might feel like there's only the auction house side and the player interaction side and the everything is fucking shit side. But there's also a lot of people like me where they're just kind of, I wouldn't know. Those would be, I would hope, the majority, and eventually maybe that's what GGG was hoping for. Like, there's a lot of people like that. Maybe one day Johnny's gonna be going through the forums and he's gonna see this one thread with no responses posted 9 hours ago, and he's got the perfect solution to all of trading, and this hasn't happened yet.
Right.
I don't think it's coming, by the way. If anybody from GGG is actually waiting.
No. Well, I've been saying I want a currency auction house. What do you think about that, Raiz?
A currency auction house? But we have that, dude.
I mean, automated currency auction.
It's completely
it's between people.
Yeah, you just go to Act 3 and you talk to Clarissa and you can trade your regret orb for an alchemy.
Trolled. Okay, but I mean, in fairness, that's exactly what I want.
Yeah.
You just fucking fire it into the void and you just get the shit that you actually are looking for. Whatever.
So where can I buy my essences?
Yeah.
Yes, just given the fact that the types of currency has exploded in the past year and a half, I want to just be able to go click something somewhere and just get what I'm looking for. Even if I mean, maybe it's not a good solution. Right. I don't know.
Extreme for sure. I don't know. The problem is I feel like they can't really. Okay, so here's the thing too, right? Because a part of the manifesto and a TLDR of all of that was trading is shit on purpose, by the way. And that's what a lot of
Right.
people got. And
Yeah.
that's
Yes.
also what a lot of the Xbox and the China people got. It's like, well, we gave you an auction house, but it's shit, by the way. So in a way, they were experimenting with it, but I feel like this isn't something that you could ever do on a live server. Like once you commit to something like that, if you're keeping it, you're disappointing a huge part of the community, even if it's great. And if you're removing it and it's 5% of the community, that's still a huge backlash, you know? They're really, ever since that cast on crit thing that they've nerfed, it's like they are in full panic mode. Anytime they have to get rid of something or nerf something, they're just like, no, we'd rather not do it than attempt a solution.
Yeah. Well, because I still come back to why do we still have Ground Slam in the game? Because they've said that they want to keep that gem for the people who want to play it instead of making Ground Slam into Sunder or Ice Crash or Earthquake or whatever, right? Those are Ground Slam just for 2017. So they or whatever. I mean, in some sense. So I mean, to me, it's the same thing. They do that, except sometimes, occasionally, they're just like, well, we just can't make this playstyle work, so fuck it. Like me personally, I love Shotgun, Incinerate, Freeze Balls, whatever. That's all. I guess it's not
I
totally
wanted to
gone
bring that
because
back. Shotgun.
You want them?
Yeah. If we can have
Yeah.
overlapping AoE, we can also have shotgun. Like it makes no sense not to have both. Just don't give it to monsters or something. I don't know.
Well, that's the thing that I
Or maybe-
see as
maybe
the
monsters
biggest
should.
benefits from that. It's like
Maybe monsters should have it
monsters
back.
don't fight back.
Yeah,
This is
yeah.
a pretty good way to make monsters
it's
fight
true,
back
yeah.
without them having a something that is based off of a death. Like they die and then they're the most scary when they die. This is something that they can genuinely do a lot of damage out of nowhere if you just don't position yourself correctly.
We just need custom league with old cock, old shotgun, old reflect. I don't know what other memes can we throw in. I don't know memes, but yeah, I mean,
I kind of find it.
Old trading.
Mind-numbingly.
Farm trading.
trading only. Yeah.
Sometimes when I look at PoE these days, I find it really boring in the sense that, okay, what are the best skills for like pushing on like DPS and like tanky builds? Oh, you go with Scorching Ray and you attach multipliers, right? Every single mechanical thing that they've ever had that actually generated a lot of DPS is gone. The only way now it's like, oh, you find the one skill that works on its own that has as many multipliers as possible that you can attach to the thing, and you use that. And the only other exceptions are the ones that are still abusing multiple projectile projectile mechanics. It's there's also conversion. So there's like a little bit, but all those skills are like, they just function the same, right? It's like you have this like one thing and you're just like, I don't know.
Well, so I think the problem ended up, they started listening to people like me or you or Raiz about a specific problem, and then tried to fix that. And the
Well, they
problem,
didn't listen. At least they didn't listen to me because I had more interesting solutions.
But I'm just saying, whatever our pet peeve is, like, so
Yeah,
let's say
yeah. No, you're
like,
right.
So my
you're
pet
right.
peeve is trading. So let's say hypothetically they fix trading to
Mhm.
make me happy, and it destroys trading because I don't know. I don't
okay.
truly know.
Yeah.
I feel a way, but I could be wrong. And so there was somebody about Reflect, there was somebody about LMP, there was somebody. I mean, Cock was probably just server costs, but there were those things, and they just took the chop to it.
Yeah.
And once you start doing that to a lot of different stuff, you've removed a lot of the things that make kind of sort of interesting.
They're like defining to PoE.
I agree.
Like,
Yeah.
Yeah, like for instance, you guys fucked me over with the shotgunning change because I really enjoyed positioning
I
myself in
enjoyed that as
combat.
well. I didn't.
Yeah,
I thought that was a bad thing. I thought that was a bad change.
People were saying, no, I'm kidding, because people were saying like remove shotgunning, like that was such a huge issue, and I never understood. I was like, it gives you this amount of pacing, and you have to position yourself, and you see what the mob is, like you can tell a lot of. But people were like, no, it does too much damage, remove it. And now combat is just like, how fast can you freaking zoom? And I mean, you want to be in the mob's face, right? Because your fortify got a proc, baby.
Right.
It's like,
Oh my God.
I don't know. What if
what a
that mob
great-
could just instantly kill you? Then I don't know.
You
if
know,
you'd be so happy.
see now, what a great. So that's something we haven't talked about in a while. What a perfect example of when they were like, "How do we fix melee?" And so like, what if we do a fortify mechanic? And literally, I remember the fucking thread being talked about. Someone was like, people will figure out how to make it work on casters or whatever, because there's either you're going to just make a permanent change to make Marauders and whatever Templars take, and I don't know, Shadows take less damage versus something. Otherwise, it'll be an exploitable mechanic. And here we are, where it's this stupid fucking everyone has their shield charge fortify bullshit. So it was like, I don't like, it was so obvious at the time. It was such a strange, it feels so strange to me. Why wasn't there, if it's such a problem, we really need to spend more time on a creative solution. It feels like that's the thing. I don't know. Like, it's the same thing with Volpact. The creative solution for Volpact was you had to spend more points than a character realistically can have in order to make it work. Then they violated that by giving everyone 15 more points on the skill tree. So instead of moving Volpact all the way over to the left or something, they were just like, we'll just do some other weird, stupid bullshit, which was like, that was the whole point of the balance. I don't, it's just, it just feels like they have a legacy solution to a problem. And then when that legacy thing gets invalidated by something, they never go back and adjust. That's what it feels like to me.
Volpact is such a good example. I remember when like Freeze Pulse characters would just travel like 15 to 24 points just to pick up Volpact, and it would be worth it. And then they don't change it at all. It's like now it's fine.
Yeah.
But please, you see, with all this, especially on Volpact, and then you have like, and this is like the danger, because now it's like, oh, but Volpact, remove it. So many people have heard say, oh, remove Volpact, right? Instead of nerfing ES, everyone says remove Volpact, because you're gonna see the same thing with life. Sure, but what happens then? You remove Volpact, you now remove the playstyle of the game, just as you did fucking Incinerate LMP on GMP, right? You remove shotgunning, you want instant healing. You don't want to keep removing mechanics. It just it makes the game, like, it just simplifies and homogenizes, or whatever you want to call the words. Right? That's not what we want to do.
Then you have to bring up the other mechanics to the level of that mechanic.
No, or you have to nerf the mechanic itself to make it weaker, but still be in the game.
Yeah.
Like, put a penalty on it.
So what they did with ES, right? See how many people are playing ES now?
Well, but the thing persists just to, like, right? So you remove that. That was because of Ghost Reaver. People will still be Volpact, but with Ghost Reaver, right? So that's that. Then if you still had Volpact with that, you just have them on both Life and ES now.
Wait, so before we keep
because
going,
you can go Berserker.
I haven't played PoE in literally 2.5 months. Where is ES right now? Like, I have no, like, I pretend like I'm a new player. I have no idea. Is ES in a really bad place right now, or is it still functioning?
It functions just fine.
It functions, but
it's hard to pull off. It's very niche.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because people really like abused it, right? The whole tabula rasa 10k ES stuff. Like, people could do that with just very few nodes. Like, you can't do any of that, and therefore everybody thinks it's completely unplayable. You can definitely still play CI, and hybrid is quite powerful right now, I would say.
Like low life RF as well, like, right? Like, there are builds that are extremely powerful with the ES right now.
Okay. Yeah, but it's just like, it's like what, 5% maybe?
Yeah.
In comparison to life.
Yeah. It's also like availability of gear and all that kind of stuff. Like, it's all the whole meme, like, kind of like grows, and everyone thinks it's bad, so nobody plays it because they're under the assumption that it sucks.
Yeah. Well, and it is very funny that, I mean, Carl addressed this a long time ago. The first time they did the first time we'd gotten more points, and then people were able to do the travel around the tree to get unwavering, and then all this stuff, and we're doing CI, Searing Touch, whatever. And so then they nerfed it, and it wasn't really nerfed that badly. People still could have played it, but it fed on itself because no one was crafting, no one was doing alching every Vol regalia in the map, I guess, and lucky. So yeah, it's interesting. It is that I will say I'm very sympathetic to them on that point. I'm not saying they did it right or wrong. I just am sympathetic because it does seem to like there's a momentum aspect. If everyone regards CI as best, even if it's maybe not, just because people regard it like that, then it furthers the whole thing. So
It's. I think they have a really tricky job also because PoE is very well known for being an extremely complex game, and then
Right.
if you were to compare it to something like StarCraft 2, that is also an extremely complex game, right? In that game, people were complaining for an entire year almost or something like that, and then eventually people are like, "Oh, you can just use." You can just play infestors and then you're fine, right? Somebody figured it out. But in that game, people had the competitive drive because they want to, like, if the developer's not fixing this, we have to find a solution and we have to beat these other dudes. Therefore, they find something like that. But in PoE, there's no like competitive drive to really figure something out. And even if you do, everybody else is going to instantly know about it anyway, so it doesn't really put you ahead. So in the middle of all of that, you've got 99% of the community just going, fucking change it, fucking. And they're like, no, guys, please, there's this one thing. I swear to God, just figure it out. And they're just like, no, nobody's trying to figure things out. So what it boils down to is that we need more PvP and then
PvP.
PvP fixes everything.
Well, so, okay, we can end on a note. What do you think the PoE trade website, do you think that it's the first step of more things to come, or do you think they're just trying to get things under control and they're going to try to keep things the same as much as they can?
I think this is it.
Okay.
I think there's going to be an in-game system eventually for trading, but this is it. Maybe somewhere in the very far future, they're going to implement some sort of system where you don't have to go to the other player's hideout, maybe. And you can trade across, but still have that, that
Player,
little
right?
talk, right? You fucker, you entered my map, You're still gonna have that, but then, yeah, I think this is it.
So what do you think, Dougie?
Yeah, I don't think we're gonna see a lot on the actual trading part. I think they've decided that we can actually come up with a better solution. So we're gonna give players like a tutorial version, right? So we have the tutorials in game, or you can go on YouTube, right? YouTube provides better content for that, but we have a simpler way of doing it. Same thing with trade. They want to have it so that they have the solution if players want to engage with the GG system. If you want to go broader, you go on the sites. And I think that's what we can do for now. And then they want to like what I'm looking for is what are they going to do in the next leagues in terms of like the balance of them, like item drops and all that kind of stuff. Like that's the interesting part, because if you make the game a little slower, you also make trades more. Like that affects trade as well, right? Because and all that. So I think that's going to be the interesting part. On the trade itself, I don't think we're going to see too many other things. I think they're going to look for the things that people hate, and they're going to solve that, and then they're going to try and like see what can we do with the core game instead. Because I would probably think that they've just seen that we can actually make a good trading system. Maybe they can. Hey, maybe they have something in the works, but I don't think so.
Yeah, I still think it'd be really cool. People have suggested it for a long time. The whole like a bazaar. You even have the name and the game the map, but where people can go and like set up a shop or something and like have shit out, and people can come through and mouse over things and that's way more sort of in-world RPG, like fits the lore more than tapping out to your third-party downloads porn to your computer or website, which is what people are afraid of. So, I don't know.
And in that way, we don't need a green dude, by the way.
Right, exactly. We don't need a green dude, exactly. So I am very curious what is going to be the net result, because I tend to believe in. You guys have been playing this long, right? There was, God, what was the other website? There was only really one other. It might have come out around the same time as PoE Trade. There was a website before it, and then there was a website that came out about the same time as PoE Trade. And I always used PoE Trade because it was definitely the least visually attractive, but it had the most stats you could search for in the list, which always mattered to me. And those other two websites completely shit out after only like 6 months or a year. And so I feel like even though you guys are making or Noogie's made the point that people will go to the websites for the whatever, I feel like things tend to be all or nothing so often when there's no reason to, like, let's say that GGG's website does 99% of what XYZ does, but it does it 3 seconds slower. And I understand that matters, but it's officially supported. So why would you use the other one? Wouldn't the other one
that's
die?
the thing too. Like, how many people would really know about the other one? I mean, enough for now, but
Sure.
the players are
turnover.
constantly rotating. So
Yeah.
all these new players that are introduced to the game, they're going to be hearing less and less about these external websites.
Right. Well, I guess we'll see. I feel a little bit bad if this is the swan song for PoE trade and for Mr. XYZ. I feel very sad about that because I liked him. I think he was a pretty core reason to me that PoE is the game it is today. Right? I don't know if anyone would disagree with that.
He deserves a statue. I never understood why he wasn't like. I think genuinely, I was always so baffled. Like, obviously, we don't know what's going behind the scenes, but
sure,
like in any other game, that guy would be a millionaire by now because the developer would be paying him like 50,000 every week or something just to keep the website up. Like, imagine if he would blackmail them or something.
Yeah,
just like, I'm gonna turn off this website and you don't have a solution. Right. Give me this amount of money, and they'd be like, well, either our game dies for this amount of days and we don't really have a solution, or we pay this money. What costs us less money? Paying the money, and then they would, right? So I don't know how nothing really ever went wrong if he signed something, but it's almost a miracle that nothing ever was like super out of place outside of like XYZ being down for a day or something like that.
Right. I kind of wonder though if GG would have been happy if every single trade site actually went down.
I think so.
In some way, and they would see the people adjust and then kind of like form into their way of thinking. I don't actually think that. I don't know. I feel like PoE trade got so good. I think that they might have been like, shit, he's doing it again. Fuck, can he just stop? It's getting better. It's getting better. It's getting better. It's fucking with our balance.
Yeah, you think they haven't foreseen like how big of an impact?
No, I don't think so. Not at all. I think that's why we're here right now. I think how efficient people got took them by surprise.
That's possible. I mean, we've seen that before. Cough, cough, vol fireball. So
right. I mean, but he must have been making a good amount of money because I donated to him twice a long time ago, and I always was telling people to donate because. I mean, I can't imagine PoE without PoE trade, but I guess he turned that off a long time ago. I don't know why, or I don't.
Apparently, XYZ said that he gets the stipend. What is that, like a
stipend?
Stipend? What is that?
Okay, that's like if you work for a company and they're like, we'll give you $1,000 a month to find housing if we're stationing you somewhere. So
okay.
Oh, okay. So he was getting paid.
So maybe he is getting paid to keep running.
Stipend this is from GGG.
Well, he said it apparently.
Wait, so we don't only have to be angry about the state of trading. We could now also be angry at the fact that he's getting fired after all this time.
No, I mean, I don't know.
How could they do this to him?
How could they do this? But I hope it would be nice if we could have there'd be like a little Easter egg or something in the game about Mr. XYZ. I don't know. I feel like there were some very dark times when PoE would have been a much worse spot without his website. But yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's
Mr. XYZ. Nessa is gone, everybody. She got eaten by a crab. Spoiler alert. It's Mr. XYZ's time.
Yeah, I think that's exactly. All right. Well, I guess we will have to leave it there. See what ends up happening. I don't know if I don't know. We'll have today is the 5th. When do the 10-day leagues start? A couple more days? I don't remember now.
5 days? The 10th?
Was it the 10th?
Well, the league.
The races? Yeah.
Oh, so there's 10-day races in 5 days, right?
Yes.
And then the league starts when is that? 8th of December?
8th? I thought it was, it was 8th. It's 8th or 1st. Those two.
No, they pushed it. They pushed it a little, yeah.
Oh, okay, so
Yeah.
okay, so we have a couple more weeks where we could, maybe there'll be a couple little more things that'll come out, and we'll see. Yeah, we'll see what ends up happening.
Yeah, and to the
But
people that are sad of us saying that, potentially there's not going to be any changes, you can,
Well, there
we're the
already
type of,
is changes.
I feel like a lot
FK,
of, yeah, I feel like a lot of us are people who have never expected for desync to be changed, or never, at least I personally have never expected for desync to be changed. I've never expected for
never.
trading to be changed. And if it happens, it's a happy accident.
Correct.
But I am also retarded, so probably shouldn't, stay waiting for the next 100 years.
Right.
That's what's
Right.
gonna happen.
I think that's a good way to end it. So yeah, Mr. Reyes, thank you very much for coming on. It was great having you. So.
Thank you so much. It was so much fun.
Oh, we should say, of course,
of course.
in case people don't know, where can they find you, Mr. Reyes, if they're looking for you out there in the interwebs at various places?
You can find me in the Grim Dawn game directory on Twitch. Always. from now on. And also on twitch.tv, RaizQT, and you can also check it out on YouTube under the same address without the Twitch TV.
What's the name of the new expansion? Ashes of
Malmuth.
There you go.
I have to download it, I guess, and play it. So I guess that was a free plug to Grim Dawn on our Path of Exile podcast here. And as always, you can find us at thecoffeetalkpodcast.com. You can subscribe. All that fancy, crazy stuff is all there, easily clickable. And of course, this will be uploaded on Nugi's YouTube, which is
youtube.com/nugiyen.
And yeah, then it'll be up on all the things for all the fancy kids to download and listen and all that stuff. So thanks for coming.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.